Our Minister, I think it was a good opportunity, Damon, to thank you as a major sponsor and host of this conference. Just awesome facility, lovely being here. Thank you very much. And also recognising Signature Construction, Home, Parryfield Lawyers, Zavanti, Bunnings Trade, SPM Assets and Otautahi Community Housing Trust. And I would really encourage you, if you could please, because this conference actually was made possible by the sponsors and by our exhibitors outside. Please do, when you get a chance, take your time, introduce yourself, say hello and find out about what they're doing, because without them, to be honest, the conference wouldn't be happening. It's a huge support that they've given to us. So just wanted to say a big shout out to the exhibitors and the sponsors, and thank you very much. It gives me great pleasure, Minister, to introduce you. Thank you so much for coming to join us. We're the overriding theme, just so you know, is growing together and sharing our knowledge. And when we were talking yesterday about what growing together means in this context, it was deeply embedded in whanaungatanga and recognising that actually as a sector, we need to do more with less, and we need to innovate and we need to collaborate. And we are committed to delivering on the confidence that you and your government have shown in us in terms of the new housing supply. So please join me in welcoming Minister Potaka to.
Hei, he honore kororia ki te atua maunga rongo ki te whenua whakaro pai ki ngā tāngata katoa. Honour and glory to God, peace on heaven and earth, and goodwill to all humankind. E mihi ana ki ngā iwi take o te wāhi nei, ki a Ngāti Whātua o Rākei, te tau te kuringu tū me Ngāti Ngāho, tatu atu rā ki ngā wai o Horochu, ki te Waitemata me te Pātaka kai a Tikapa Moana. Ngā mate o te wā e upane kopane nei o te atu rā. Tātou ngā urupa kanohi o rātou mā tēnā tātou hui nei, Damon. Mihi ana ki a koe hoa, ko koe hoki te toihau o te wāhi nei, e whakakanohi nei i te manaakitanga, i te mātauronga hoki o Tā Paora Reefs, tai atu ki ngā mātanga o te wāhi nei. It always gives me great pleasure to spend 2.5 hours of quality time driving to Hamilton North from Hamilton. And to be really woken up by some of the loud shirts that could come from my wardrobe. So John, thank you for that, mate. That's like straight out of those Tui shirts back in the 1990s, actually. Those cricket shirts that used to be sold. But thank you all for your mahi. Actually, all of you have come to have a kōrero and have a whakarongo, but more importantly, to figure out how you can do your mahi better out there in the housing community. And I really appreciate it, as I echo the words of Minister Chris Bishop. The mahi that you do, not easy mahi, and I've had the great fortune to be involved in the type of mahi that you're doing. Some of you knew my former boss. I was actually his first cadet. His name was James Brown. And James was a bit of a dancer, singer, movie star, but also a bit of a hard man from Clevedon. And he was someone that really wanted to focus on getting things done however way he could. And some of you probably knew James. He knew everyone from the prospectors to the Prime Minister. He was that sort of character and personality. I know Ellie and Paul, you guys knew James. But he really had an appetite to help people and to tautoko people, not just into housing, but with their lives. And it's the type of personality and characteristics that I think probably most of you demonstrate. It's not just about housing, but it's about people's lives and getting them into a reset, but into a space where they could grow and live out their potential. And the comments that John made earlier, I think really resonate with me and are very illustrative of the type of personality and mentoring that I had from James and a number of other people, including Sir Paul. So thank you for your mahi, and acknowledge, of course, Community Housing Aotearoa and Te Matapihi, my cousin over here, Ellie. True story, actually, Ellie is my cousin. She's not one of those down the road cousins. She's a real cousin. Her grandmother and my grandfather, brother and sister, and grew up in similar parts of the country. Best part of the country, apart from Hamilton, being the Central North Island, Te Puko o Te Ika. But certainly acknowledge the speakers and Minister Bishop, who made a few comments earlier. I've got a whole bunch of notes that my diligent officials have been putting together, but I'm actually here just to have a listen, to have a whakarongo, get some intel from you about what's working and what isn't working, particularly in emergency housing. All of you know the numbers and the stats, but some of you have seen some consequences for the decisions that we've made that maybe we don't see from the bowels of the Wellington Beltway, or alternatively the zoo in Hamilton. I actually live out by the zoo, that we don't necessarily see in person, and we don't necessarily see those unintended consequences from some of our decisions. So be honest with me, hold me accountable if you think that things aren't going right. The numbers are pretty stark where we started from when we arrived in office 1 year ago today. I don't think I had any here then either, Paul, but you've got less now, mate. It was 3,342 at the end of November last year, households in emergency. At the end of October was 993. Today, I'll tell you, it's 871 this week. But that's only a little part of the broader housing crisis that you see every single day. That's a target that we have as one of our government targets, target number 8. I feel like I'm in a game of pool, I'm the 8 ball. And you know, it's to get that number down to 800 households by 2030. And as I said, we're less than 900 this week. It's blue shoots, but it doesn't actually deal with the emergency in housing. It just is dealing with emergency housing. But the emergency is multiples bigger than the emergency housing or emergency motels and hotels. And people will say, you don't know what you're talking about, mate. I live on Ulster Street. I know what that is, what's going on down there. I was down there yesterday, actually, and there has been some positive and constructive change. But there's probably also been, and you would have seen this in your areas, a little rise in homelessness and maybe a few other issues that go with some of the decisions and are not symptomatic just of the decisions that we make in housing, but are actually symptomatic of a real range of issues, including health, which is a massive one for people throughout the country, and especially in places where there actually is no emergency housing. So if you go up north, for example, up to Te Tai Tukaro, very, very little emergency motels and hotels up there. You've just got emergency. And that's the troubles that we have and what we're trying to understand. That's one of the reasons why I was very determined to chaperone the Prime Minister to a place called Utukura. I don't know, can you put up your hands if you've ever been to Utukura before, out at Horeke? Now, if you ever want to see the crisis in housing, Horeke, Utukura, those sorts of places is where you see it. And it's around the country. You just go down to Waitarata. Anyone knows where Waitarata is? Can you put up your hand if you know where Waitarata is? It's just out towards Kawakawa Bay from Clevedon. And there's a whole bunch of whānau in there living in, conditions that are like whitebait shacks. Are very difficult and very challenging. And it's incumbent upon people like myself to understand what is really going on in our communities, not just what my mates, the officialdom, is reporting. And that's why you'll see me sometimes dressed up as Mystery Minister in a Department of Conservation jacket, making out I work for Te Papa Atawhai, out there checking things out. And that's really important to me because the decisions that we make ultimately have impacts on the ground. And sure, we're saving $20 million a month as a result of the changes in the emergency housing numbers. And that's a newsreel for the Evening Post or for the New Zealand Herald. But what we really need to look at is, okay, we can make that change, but are we dealing with the crisis and the emergency in housing? And that's what really motivates me to be supporting Minister Bishop and Minister Willis and others who are involved in what I would describe as a bit of a renaissance and how the government addresses housing and particularly the funding and the financing. So I know that Minister Bishop had some comments on that yesterday. One of the things that really, really G's me up and motivates me and gets me going is the number of tamariki that have been in emergency housing, particularly in places like Hastings, Heretaunga or Hamilton, Kirikiriroa, Rotorua. And there's been around 2,500 young children who have come out of emergency housing since November last year. And I think that's a really good thing. Okay, most of them, we sort of know where they're going, And we started up something called Priority One, which is basically prioritising children who have been in emergency housing for longer than 12 weeks to the top of the social housing register. And there are people that don't agree with the way we've done that. And I respect that. And I respect and can have the conversation about that. But I was tired of seeing kids sleeping in motels for 2, 3, 4 years. Just had enough. And that's why when I came into the position I'm in now, talking with Minister Upson, Minister Bishop, Minister Wilson, I said, we've got to get these kids out of emergency motels. You go to a place like Ulster Street in Hamilton, or Fenton Street, Rotorua, down by the Pa, the Apollo and others, down at Rotorua, Whakarewarewa, and it really is, a pack and save trolley Grand Prix. Not cool for me. That's why we made the decision, no, we're going to prioritise these kids along with those with rheumatic and oranga tamariki placements, get them out of motels. And I've seen some wonderful results as a result of that prioritisation. Visited a young lady in Tauranga. Were you with me that day? No. A young lady in Tauranga. I literally thought she was one of the children, very, very young. She said she'd been in emergency for 6 years, had 4 kids while she was in emergency. I was like, wow, crazy. She was from Raitahi, actually, this young kōtero. And I was like, wow. There were one baby, maybe a 2-year-old, and twins. They were 5. And I said, wow, that's a real challenge. And how are you going? The thing that she said to me, which I found really striking, was it's not necessarily the house or there's a Kāinga Ora property that has given me security. It was these 2 aunties that were sitting next to me at the table. She said, these aunties have helped me stay attuned and understand how to look after the house and how to look after my tamariki, that wraparound support. That was the killer blow for me. I was like, right, we can build houses, but if we don't give people that necessary support, which many of you are involved in, actually we're not winning. So we've got to have not just a house build, you've got to have a bit of wraparound when and as needed. Not for everyone. Everyone doesn't need it, but many people do, especially when you're sort of 20 years old with 4 kids and you've been living 6 years in an emergency hotel. Not cool. But we were really focused on, pre-election and since then, making sure that emergency housing in most towns, most big towns in New Zealand, is still available for those with a genuine need for a short-term stay. Some towns, there are no emergency hotels and motels. Many of the big cities still have capacity, still can provide, and will continue to do so. But there have been a number of factors that have contributed to the decline as well, whether or not that's the eligibility and expectation criteria, prioritising families, but also the social housing supply, which many of you have been involved in. All those things work together in chunks. You can't just have one and not the other. Like we can change the eligibility criteria, but if there's no supply, there's no supply. That's why we're very enthusiastic about supporting the community housing sector and Minister Bishop has had some comments yesterday around the dollars and the pūtea, but to actually provide supply. We're very agnostic as to how that supply comes on, but we're very focused. We've got to figure out how to deliver supply. And I know John's got some views on how the urban form might work, whether or not it's greenfield, brownfield, up, across, down, whatever. I've been to so many positive, constructive openings of new houses, but facilities and locations, whether or not that's out in the boonies. Did you come to Pohara? Out at Pohara Marae, just south of Cambridge, out at Gisborne with Willie Te Aho and Annette Wehi, Tāpeta and Co, out at Toitu Tairāwhiti, the Tasman Housing Trust down in Nelson, several initiatives up north. I was with Jade Moringa and Co. Is Jade here, actually? Jade Moringa and Co up at the Ngāpui Community Housing Provider up in Kaikoai. I was up there a couple of weeks ago. There's some really, really good things happening in our communities, not just to accommodate people, but also to tautoko them. And of course, those continuing housing support services and products that are available through MSD to support those families that are on the brink of going in or trying to get out. And really love the work that some of the regional commissioners like Tracy Smith down in Hamilton, Jules down in Margaret, and a few other places that are working under Viv Rickard to provide that sort of tautoko for people, not just those that are in, but also those that are sort of exposed to getting into a difficult space in housing. We've also made another change, and that's trialling out the social outcomes contract. And a couple of weeks ago, I went down to see Murray at DCM down by the hospital in Wellington. Actually, it was a nice place, that place. And then you didn't have to pay for, well, you did have to pay for your coffee, but there was no cost. You had to actually just donate. Koha. Might go back there a bit more often, actually. He's undertaking the social outcomes contract where we're really focused now on the different demographic that's in EH, which is tilted more towards whānau or households without children. So when we came into office this time last year, about 45% of those in EH were singles with children, and about 45% were singles without children. That has changed massively as a result of Priority 1, massive change. It's just gone. And so now we're trying to figure out how can we trial a different way or a different method, we call it social outcomes contracting, really aligned with the social investment aspirations of Minister Willis and ensuring that the data and the attribution of action to outcome is much clearer. So DCM with Murray and Hope and the crew at Emerge in Hamilton, DCM in Wellington and Emerge in Hamilton have taken up the opportunity to enter into this social outcomes contracting arrangement. A little bit different, focused on single households, but with incentive payments arranged around ensuring that singles and couples without children stay out of emergency housing on a 3, 6 and 13-month basis. There'll be some incentive payments that go with it. We're just trialing it and seeing, does this work? Will this work? We don't know. But if we don't try something, then we'll get nowhere. I always said to my daughter yesterday, actually, if you want to win Big Wednesday, you've got to go and buy a ticket. If you don't want to win, then don't buy a ticket. Simple. What does that mean, Dad? If you want a job, you've got to ask people. Don't expect people to turn up and say, I've got a job for you. So that's what we're trying. The reason why we started in Waikato and Wellington is because those two places have the highest numbers of households in emergency housing right now. Hamilton has for a while, for a couple of years. But those numbers, they've come down massively, and we want to see them come down even more. But a bit more flexibility around those arrangements, around the contracting, and DCM and Emerge can use that money for more flexible, let's say, support. So it could be helping people get into their driver's license, a bit of counselling, servicing, open bank accounts and other things. That money can be used, the funding can be used to help people reset their lives and get going on that. And there'll be some evaluation, a bit of trial on that. Just wanted to mention a couple more things around Māori housing in particular, and the work that Ellie and others have been doing to get Māori chips up and going. Of course, Māori chips being about 40% of all the chips that are registered at the moment. We are going to, and I'm very happy to announce actually, some of the support for more affordable rentals being run out of Māori and iwi providers. So the government's given a green light for nearly 200 affordable rental homes, mainly on Māori-owned land, and funding of $80 million right through the country. So 12 projects, 200 homes, around $80 million for affordable rentals with 12 iwi and Māori providers. I don't know if Ellie would have been talking about this, but different ones throughout the country are doing good things. And we're going to send that message out today on the proverbial news feeds. I'll see we're writing up Toitu to Tiriti while I'm speaking too. So yeah, kia ora to that. That's a good one. Yeah, Tama said. There has been a drop in the social housing numbers. Oh, you're right there, bro. Cat's pie. Was that you, Rob? Oh, hey, bro. This fellow and I used to go to school together. Used to be dunking over me like LeBron James. I was like, I'm like Spud Webb and he's like LeBron. True story. But the social housing numbers have come down for sure. And that's cool. But there's still a massive need. So we can talk about those numbers, but you actually see what's going on. And that's what we need to hear. I have had a couple of meetings with Lisa out at Vision West and a few others. Tēnā pai. Happy to come wherever, whenever, especially if there's a conservation estate properly nearby. I can do two of my portfolios at once. But I do get around the country. And so when I go around on my tours, I try to see someone in housing, someone in conservation, Māori development all at once. And it doesn't matter where it is. Like I even went to a place called Rarako Does anyone know where Rarako is? It's like 100 k's west of Invercargill. You go past the sausage capital of New Zealand, Tuatapere, and you get to this place, Rarako. But out there, like out in the boonies of West Southland, people need housing. Surprise, surprise. And so I'm open to going and seeing where you are working and what you're doing out there. I'm not going to take much more time, actually, Paul, because I've had my 15 minutes or 12 minutes. I'd rather get into a bit of question and answer. And hey, if you want to hold me accountable on TV, do that too. I get that every Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday at 2 o'clock in the house. So no mai te pātua. Yeah, bang it out. Yeah, give them. I don't need applause. Yeah.
Do we have a few questions? Yes.
Oh, yes, kia ora whai. No patsies, no patsies.
Hello.
Kia ora whena.
From Turanganui Akiwa Housing,
Oh, kia ora.
Tairawhiti.
Yep.
My question is around, you're saying that the number of emergency housing is going down. Is that actually a real number? Because we've actually seen it growing.
Yeah, I think the real number that's reported has gone down from 3,342 in November last year, and it's down below 1,000 this year. Now, what I'm saying is that's in the hotels and the motels. There's plenty of emergency situations that are out there, but they might not be getting emergency housing funding. They're just in an emergency. That's what I'm saying. And you might see those numbers going up, but the number of people in hotels and motels has definitely gone down by 70%.
Because I'm finding that MSD isn't actually being accountable to whānau that actually need it.
Oh, for sure.
And they're
Yeah.
navigating around their own system
Yep.
to actually record the accurate numbers.
Yep.
So that's my concern.
Yep. Yeah, no, like, hey, look, I'm right with you, and that's the sort of feedback that we actually need to hear. And I'm not saying that's right or wrong, it's just we need to hear that and to understand what is going on, because I only see the numbers unless I get out in the communities and sit down and see what's going on, whether or not that's walking out, on the street with Julie and the crew at Link Services or Wise Group in Hamilton, or come to see you and actually going out and about. And that's not the sort of, you go to the airport and then you go over here and you go to the airport and you're out again. That's actually going a bit more, I'm not calling it stealth mode, but just being a bit more mindful, actually what is going on. So, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. But maybe that, and this is what we need to know, and there's a housing reference group that looks at this particular issue. And up until a couple of months ago, I think that a lot of the evidence around the emergency housing numbers continuing, or homelessness continuing to go like this, some of that was a bit anecdotal, but now we're getting a bit more into it. We can actually see it's not anecdotal, it's real. And that's what we need to get out and find out. And then not just find out, but actually take action. We can't just find out and sort of karakia and everything will be fine. No. I'm not about that. Okay, so. Yes, Paul?
Marie, ko Cindy Kawana Takawingawa. I'm from Etipuria Whānau Services, which is Ngāti Pawa Health and Social Service. I just want to talk to the kōrero you've just had around the drop in emergency housing. We're certainly seeing it in the team parenting space. That
team parenting?
Team parenting.
Yeah.
That they're not even getting into emergency houses. We see more sleeping in cars with their babies or hapu, because MSD will not, their response from MSD is they're not allowed to put them into emergency housing, which distorts your figures.
Yep.
And when we hear we don't know, we don't know where they're going, we're telling you this is where they're going, they're sleeping in cars. They can't even get on social housing registers. MSD.
Is it age?
Nope.
Okay.
No, they're not allowed to place people in emergency housing at all, irrespective of age. So that's the message that's coming out on the ground, because they have to drop their numbers to fit the criteria that you or the government have asked for. The other thing, I'm just doing a pitch for Te Matapihi. When you talked about, with Ellie and Wayne, when you talked about the support that they can give for CHIPS providers. It'd probably be really good if there was pūtea that went with that, so that they actually can offer that support. You know, they do it out of koha, and I know it is a bit of a difficult space, so that's a bit of a pitch for them and for us in the sector.
Yeah, can I just make a comment before we get to the man with the good haircut? I think what you're saying around those initial comments around tea parenting, that's a real concern for me. I'm really triggered by those sorts of observations. I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm saying that's probably right, and we need to get and understand that, because there's significant pūtea at MSD to help people in those situations. It's out there. That's the housing support products. You know, that's out there. If that's not connecting with people in need, then I have a problem with that. I have a real problem with that. So I just need to get under that a little bit more. Maybe, Paul, one of the things that we can do is that, you know, we've got the housing reference group, but people will have very acutely well-evidenced stories and quoted about what's actually happened for their whānau or their, I call them customers or clients, but whānau who are in need, but that need's not attaching to delivery. And so I welcome that sort of comment, but thank you. Thank you for that. Yep. Can I just ask Huriwai just to write that down on the team parenting matter? There's certainly been some concern expressed. Oh, hang on. First thing is, I think there's some people doing some really good stuff in youth housing. So whether or not that's Mahira or Mahia Joyce or others, they're really trying really hard. There's been some issues around how the budgets have worked out or not worked out for them, but that's a growing issue, especially in places where there's youthful populations like Hamilton. Yeah. Well, some teen parents, like in Hams, they were just living in the emergency. Yeah. So thank you for that feedback. Appreciate it.
Kia ora, Minister. Kate Kearney from Otatahi Community Housing Trust in Christchurch, way up here. Just want to thank you very much for the work you're doing in getting people out of emergency housing. It was something we called for last year at the housing conference. Yeah. You heard it, you took it up, you made it policy. Thank you. A couple of unintended consequences out of that is we've done such a good job, we're now told that there's no real housing need in Canterbury. And in fact, there's no real housing need in the South Island. And I thought, well, that's odd. Surely that shouldn't have happened. And also we're seeing an increase of people who actually cannot get into emergency housing. Exactly what our colleague here has said, the list has been shut down. But my real question for you was the excitement I felt when you said you're saving 200 million a month because of getting people out of...
20
million.
But if it's 200, let me know. I could have some uses for that money.
I was
hey, everyone come and see me about building some houses.
My question is that yesterday, Chris Bishop said 4 billion is going into housing. So you've found some savings. Is that money going to be reinvested in other housing products?
Okay, good question. Okay, so I think what has happened is in terms, you can break it and filter it in different ways. We're saving this money, right? It was whatever it is, $1 million a day now, it's less than $500,000 a day into emergency, just emergency. Some of that was budgeted to happen over time, and that money was circulated back to the centre. There's a pretty strong advocacy group, I could be part of it, to say some of that needs to be reinvested into the type of mahi that you do. Now, Minister Bishop and Minister Watson and myself have said, yep, there's the 1,500. There's the reset of Kāinga Water going on. And I think what you'll find, what pops out of that is that we're far more, as Minister Bishop described it, agnostic as to whether or not it's KO, CHIPS, iwi, and others who are not CHIPS to provide housing. We just need it, targeted, and better utilisation of the KO stock. I think what you're saying is, where's the pūtea? Because if you're saving pūtea, it should be reinvested into housing. That's, I don't want to say that's above my pay grade, but what I would say is that that's a very topical conversation. And certainly from my vantage point, the way we've funded and financed social and emergency housing, whether or not that's the IRS, OS, which is a bit of a change yesterday, or anything else, that's going to get a reset, and that's underway. What we do know is that many of you are actually doing things that are just more than providing a house. You've got a bit more manaakitanga going on. And that's actually where social investment and what Minister Willis is talking about is just intersects right into that space. It's one of the reasons we're so enthusiastic about the things that you do. That's, yeah, just take one more. Oh, yes, got a follow?
Kia ora, Minister.
Yeah, no, and I can take questions via emails and other things and come back to you on an individual. It's all good.
Kia ora, Minister. Ingrid from Dwell Housing Trust in the Wellington region.
Oh, yes, Dwell, yes,
Yeah,
out of
thank you.
Kilburnie.
So your next undercover ministry foray, we'd love to invite you to meet with the Ministry of Housing and Social HUD and hear from them what they're telling us, and I think many other chips. And we have a pipeline of work. We're ready to go. We've invested in getting projects to resource consent. Our next step is to get some indication from the ministry that we can get our IRS OS contract for 25 years so we can go to the next step of securing finance and then starting construction. So we're being told all of that is on hold. Announcements have to be made, and this is slowing down the pipeline. This is putting trades and the building industry at risk. Please come and listen to what they're telling us and then tell us why we're being put on hold when we're ready to build.
Yeah, thank you. I don't think there was a question. That was just an instruction. No. No, look, I think that there is some uncertainty. That's, I think, what you're talking to, is that there is some uncertainty in the Pūtea. Of course, Minister Bishop and Minister Willis are at the apex of that decision making. I am there too, but they are sort of there. And, I welcome the opportunity to come to see you and others out and about to hear your similar concerns. What we do know, and I think what John has not alluded to, is explicitly acknowledged, is that the longer you wait, the more expensive it seems to be getting. I do think that there has been some margin retreat in the builds and the build costs, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's making it easier for people who are doing it tough on the ground. There might be margin retreat in the development, but the people who are paying rent or whatever, they've still got it hard, and that's where I think the action really is, especially for politicians. Okay, hey, look, I appreciate the, hang on. Oh, can I just ask that those people who have not had their questions answered, I'm happy for you to email me or email my teammate over here, that tall, sharp-looking dude from Wellington.
If I can have a quick, it's Annette Sutherland here from Comcare Trust in Ōtautahi, Christchurch. I'm a member of the Housing Reference Group that you were referring to.
Yep.
The Housing Reference Group has a selection of people from around the country. We give feedback. The feedback comes through officials to you, I guess.
Why don't I just come to a meeting?
Yeah.
Simple.
That was a short
just
order
cut through
thing.
it.
Please come to our meeting and hear it direct.
Yeah,
because
I hear it direct.
some of the things that have been said, I feel like you're not necessarily getting what we're saying.
I'm happy to come to a meeting.
Thank you.
Yeah, okay. Hey, thank you for your time. I appreciate the aroha that you've got for whānau and others in need. I might not be, Nostradamus or the person who can make all decisions to make all things come right, but we are trying to focus on what we can do today. What are some of the things that would take a little bit longer to do? But most importantly for me is those people in genuine need, especially tamariki. That's where my focus is today. Thank you.